Hi everyone, it's Jan with What You Make It, and when I last left you, we were dealing with the story of the star card gone horribly wrong. Now, we ended up with a card that we really liked, and I'm always happy when I find myself running into a problem with a design idea and you just go with it, and sometimes you end up with something really wonderful, which I now have made several more of these and am so glad that I did this. But this card never really needed my metal star on it, so I set the star aside and moved on to this card. But I want to show you that I did come back to the star, and I want to show you I will show you how I made the metal star, and I'm going to show you how I made this blue card. I have to tell you that clearly I thought that the star needed to be on a rustic card, and as I got back to designing with it, I realized it maybe needed a little bit more elegance. I'm kind of into that whole copper and teal thing still. It appeals to me. So I went to work on that. And I ended up, because I'd made so many stars, I was in the process of learning how to make the stars. So I made some star ornaments. I made some big star ornaments. You can do so much with this die. But I love the dimension that it has on the page. So I also made this one over here. And the thing I'm going to show you that before we even get to making this card is that I felt like it needed design around it, but there needed to be a real clean space in the background. And I was trying to figure out how to make that happen. And I remembered that I had these embossing diffusers. They're by Sizzix, and they come in 3 sets, in a set of 3. And you get both the large plate and whatever shape it is. Here's a circle, and this one and this one. But I had never really been able to get them to work. I didn't know what the sandwich was. I didn't know. So I thought, since clearly this card needed embossing around the edges but clean in the middle, I needed to take time and figure out how to do. You know, Tim Holtz has come out with some folders that actually have a opening in the center. In fact, the card that I'm going to share with you next, I'm using one of those because I had gone and pulled out all kinds of folders trying to find the ones for this card. This was not it, but I did know this was the look I was going for. But look at all these. I have one of those that has Merry Christmas all over it, and I was able to put just leave the center of it. I think there's going to be some fun things to do in there. This one I cannot wait to play with. This was a peacock feather embossing folder that I used the embossing diffuser and left the center, and I have a peacock feather that I want to put in here. I think that's going to be gorgeous. And then these little ones, if you just wanted a little bit of one, this one, it's kind of done so that you would emboss most of the plate and have the whole opening. But I played with it a little bit and decided I thought that might be kind of cool to make just a portion of it. So how do you make this work? Because I want the deep impression, but I didn't know what the sandwich thing was and how to make it work and yada yada yada. So let me show you how I did it on this one, because this was the folder that I had used to emboss the metal in the star. So I thought that would coordinate really well, and I thought that I needed kind of an oblong, so I chose the oval. And guys, it's Simple Simon, and I wish I had known this months ago, because I would so have been doing this. You're only going to need one plate. You're going to need your base plate, and if you're working on the Cuttlebug, you're still going to just use one of your cutting plates. And what the deal is that this Let me get it out of here so you can see it. This replaces your cutting plate. See, it's about the same thickness as your cutting plate would be. And wherever you put this, the embossing folder is going to emboss. Wherever there isn't pressure, that's where it's not going to emboss. To me, the key was figuring out that the thickness was the same as my cutting plate, because now that opens up all kinds of ideas. You know, any of my label dies or whatever that I can cut through make several chipboard shapes of them, I now can make these in any shape I want, as long as I work to make it as thick as my cutting plate. So let me show you the sandwich. We want to go to tab 1 because that's where we do embossing. So I do that. I put my folder with my paper in it, and I will tell you that I find the best results with this is when I use really my heaviest cardstock. Go up to that 120-pound heavy. If you do Copic coloring, usually one of your heavier, one of those would work really well. And then I take this and I put it wherever I want to, and I kind of look down through it and make sure that I'm even between the two edges. Then I put my plate on, and it's now the exact same thickness if we just used a cutting plate, our embossing folder, and a cutting plate. So it will run through your machine really easily. And when it comes out, you see you have the embossing where the plate was, but no embossing where the cutout is. I'm going to insert right here the information about how to make these stars. I did a little bit of a demo with the larger star so that you could actually see the lines really well, because once you know how this star, when it comes out of the die, comes together, then working with whatever material you're working with, whether it is paper or some thin metal or vellum or whatever you might choose, it just makes a whole lot more sense. So I want to show you that, and then I'll show you making these metal ones and how I got the embossing on it, and we'll be back to put this card together. So I thought it would be easier for you to see how to do this folding on a plain piece of cardstock that I have marked all of the score lines. When you use the die, it makes these score lines for you. And we're basically going to be creating a series of mountain and valley folds. And I think that if you know how it works, then regardless of what kind of material you're going to use, if it's pattern paper or some sort of thin metal, it's basically the same process. So we're going to start with the mountain folds on the score lines that go out to the points of the stars. And I found that if I just worked my way around the star, doing each of the mountain folds first, that it just kind of made things go a lot easier, because once you have all of those done, it almost folds itself on the score line for the valley folds. And the valley folds are those score lines that go from the center to the little V in between each of the star points. And you can begin to just fold it back on itself and move your way all the way around. And that's one of the cool things about this die, is that trying to figure this out without those score lines, I probably wouldn't have attempted it. It does have these tabs that you can use, and if you're going to be attaching it to another star to make an ornament or onto a page, then those tabs are really helpful. When I was working on the star, my actual metal star, I ran it through the embossing folder first, and I did fold the tabs first. It's a little bit different working with stiff material like the metal, which is why I wanted you to see the cardstock version. But basically you'll see here I'm pinching on the score line and then pushing in on the valley fold. And I'm not folding it back on itself because I didn't want to totally flatten the metal, but it's basically the same thing. And if you practice one with a piece of paper, then when you move over to the metal, it's really much easier than I'm making it look, because the score lines are there and you just kind of follow along on them. Now here's where I'm supposed to be showing you how I did the embossing. I had the stars here, and then the next thing that's in my camera is, oh look, they're embossed, and I didn't show you how I did that. But basically I just ran my embossing folder over places and put some embossing powder. So to create the frame for the star, I'm going to use tumbled glass, and I am going to use an ink blending tool. And this works best if you start off the card on your mat and you begin to work in. And I want to use really light strokes here. I'm eventually going to get to a darker color, but it's so much easier to put more color on than it is to try and have too much and take it off. So I want the background. By doing this, I'm getting a little bit on the background, and obviously the leafy swirls are picking up most of it, and I'm going to darken those up even more. But I do want just a touch of this blue on the actual background here. So I'm wanting to tint it lightly. I've got that, just following the oval that our diffuser created. I had to look up what they were called, folks. I didn't know they were called diffusers. Don't think I'm smarter than I am. But I do. By the time I come to talk to you, I do want you to, I want to have the right thing. So now to make the leaves darker, I'm going to come in, and because I'm doing direct pad to paper and it's flat, if I'm working on a flat surface and I'm keeping this, as I pull this over, I should just get, it's mostly going to hit the high spots, which is the embossing on those leaves. And if you're having trouble getting it, turn your card, turn your ink pad, you know, because if you're like me and have had your ink pad for a while, it's not totally level, so you gotta work with it a little bit. I like using this Fiskars paper trimmer that has the little wire down the center. I don't know if yours has that, but that gives me a real visual as to where the cut is going to be. And I want to come right along this where the embossing is not. And I do need to change my blade, but I'm not worrying about it because I'm going to put some copper paint on the edge here. I was at Joann's the other day. No, I really don't need that much. So I'll take a bunch of that up. I was at Joann's and saw these in the dollar bin section while you're checking out. Okay, I'm just going to kind of make it a long line here. It'll make it easier to add it to the edge. I was in line waiting to check out, and they had these little dollar bin. They had watercolor paper, one pad for $1. They had oils and acrylic, all kinds, sketch kinds of things. But then they had these that were palette papers, and it's brilliant. It's like freezer paper. It's got that kind of waxy, so you can put your paint out on it, make your mess, and tear the top page off and throw it away. Brilliant idea. Okay, So can you see what I'm doing? I'm sticking my paper down and just drawing it towards me just a little bit, and it ends up giving me a nice little inked edge with the paint. And it's dimensional. I'm using acrylic. This is a metallic acrylic paint, and by doing this, I actually, because I'm too lazy to go get a new blade for my trimmer, I don't have to be so worried about my little fuzzy edge. You know, necessity is the mother of invention. So now I want to put my eyelet in, and I need to do this before I put it on the card. So I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to take my star, see where I want it to be, and I'm going to mark 2 holes. One where I'm going to put an eyelet, and then one that will come in underneath here. Then I'm going to use my crocodile on the 1/8 inch hole size. Then we're going to go up to the eyelet setting. I'm going to drop my eyelet down in there. There we go. Take a bit of twine. Trim it and put it up through the back on both. I'm not going to tie it until I put the star on. Some extra height in the center by taking 4 dimensionals, putting them on top of each other, crushed down. So I'm going to put my dimensional in the center, and it's ready to go. And I'm going to take my glossy accents, which, if I've been living right, will come out. Oh, look, I have been living right, mostly. I'm going to put some of it on the inside edges here. Any place I think it might hit the paper. This is just going to give me some added stability. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over, and now I just want to put this down kind of where I know you have little extra glossy accents drop. And now I'm going to press the edges of the side where my bent under tab is. I'm just going to give it a little bit of some additional time to dry. When you're sure that your star is good and secure, you can go ahead and tie your twine. You're going to notice that I'm going to use my tweezer bees over here as a third set of hands. I'm not great at tying bows anyway, but I do know that they turn out a little better if I can get something to hold that knot for me. And I usually will use a little extra twine, make the loops bigger, and then pull them down. I just end up with a better result. All that's left to do is to put a boatload of dimensionals on there and pop the card base on the top. I like where this one ended up, and I liked this variation on it. And you know what? I love that I learned how to use the diffusers. So I hope that even while you're in the midst of madly creating Christmas crafts or Christmas cards or whatever it is that you are doing this season, that you will save some time for creative play, because I guarantee you'll have more fun and you'll discover things you didn't even know you could do. You all take care. I'll be back with another card soon. God bless.